Welcome to the podcast of TRevMax Consulting.
Welcome to a new episode of the TRevMax Consulting podcast. I have the pleasure of having today Mr. Bassem Salam, a gentleman who's got loads of experience in revenue management, which is the focus we're having in this latest episodes. He's been managing revenue in different hotels, different companies in the Middle East for almost 20 years. So it's a pleasure to have him here with me today to discuss about his career, about revenue, and as always, some advice for young people. Bassem, how are you?
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on your podcast, and it's a pleasure to be here.
My pleasure. As always, I want to start with the beginning. So for people to know you, whoever doesn't know you and is listening to the podcast or watching it on video, who are you and how has been your career so far within hospitality?
Well, my career has been overly exciting, actually. It's been a little bit by coincidence from time to time. And I worked in regular operations when I finished my bachelor's degree, but the big break really came when I was fortunate enough to join HVS in Miami, then followed by KPMG as well in Miami. And afterwards, I moved to revenue management. And this was love at first sight. So as soon as I started getting into it, and I evolved from being a director of revenue management in Egypt and all the way to become the vice president of revenue management for Middle East, Egypt, and overlooking Africa for Accor hotels. And then I decided to venture into my own consulting, and it was amazing. It has been an amazing ride because I was able to prove what I've always preached, which is to put revenue management in multiple industries. And I was able to work in industries like student accommodation, obviously hotels, health industry, fashion industry, believe it or not, as well as in the legal industry as well. So the sky's the limit, and there's revenue management can be implemented almost in every single industry.
Okay, thanks. Interesting. And from all careers, why hospitality? If I can ask you, within hospitality, why revenue then?
Sure. Well, hospitality actually came by coincidence as well. I actually never thought of working in hospitality. I always wanted to become a commercial airline pilot. And just as a requirement back then, it would have been an added value apart from having your commercial license, is also to have a bachelor's degree. So, I chose to go into hospitality. To be honest with you, it was a lot easier than to go into School of Medicine, which I was accepted in. And the second part, because I knew the hotel business, but from the glamorous part as a guest. The revenue side, revenue is just revenues. It's like once, if you love the numbers and if you have the chance, a lot of people think that you being as a revenue, you work as a geek. And reality, it is not. It all depends. Obviously, there's a lot of my colleagues who are introverts and they prefer to do this and they're very technical and they like to stay where they are within their own bubble. But the real revenue, and that's how I had the pleasure to get exploring in it, was that you are involved in every single aspect of the operation, every single aspect of the hotel, all the way from the general manager, obviously from the regional offices, general manager, and all the way to the youngest team member in the hotel, because every single one of them can contribute to the revenue of the property. And therefore, by having the opportunity to be on a property level and taking the revenue management, starting it from scratch and going all the way up, it makes you realize that it's all about the mindset, it's all about the culture. And if you succeed in contributing to that, the best ideas you can get will be from the youngest team members. And I had the pleasure to be exposed to that. And some of these ideas that we were able to implement that came actually from a waiter in one of the coffee shops when I was in Conrad, I actually asked him to become the lead project manager for that small project. Obviously, I was guiding him, I was doing this, but the ideas, and he went and he did the presentation for the stakeholders within the hotel. And that definitely made everybody so excited about it. It was out of the box thinking. People liked the fact that I was giving a chance for someone who is not necessarily, well, for this gentleman, he didn't even have a bachelor's degree, but he had the right mindset and he really wanted to contribute to that. And guess what? So many ideas came afterwards. Obviously, we couldn't implement all of them, but the fact that everybody was so excited about it, that was the key about it. And we were all, so the success came to everybody.
Well, Nice story. So that's a way that you mentor someone. For example, you're saying from the coffee shop to get ideas into revenue. Any mentors you had? Anyone who helped you throughout your career?
Yes, I've been very fortunate that I've ran into so many great team colleagues that are my mentors, but there's two that always stand out in my mind. The first one is, his name is Christopher Froome, and he was the ex-vice president of development and feasibility studies for Marriott in Latin America and the Caribbean. And then he just recently, back about in October of last year, he just ventured into his own consulting, and it's called Appia. He is an amazing, because what people, those who know me, they would tell me that my English writing and my business writing is amazing, but that was not always the case. And even my English was not the best, even though I had the pleasure to be traveling, living abroad most of my life. But he was the gentleman who guided me into the consulting. And because when I first joined KPMG, you know, KPMG was one of the big five, and now it's one of the big four. And, you know, it's like when you're going in, everybody is really, there's a little bit of you're being afraid that you'll not perform. He made me feel comfortable from day one, and he took me by hand. And then even my English, I recall very well in my writing, I never wrote business writing before. He would sit down with me in his office, sometimes until 2 a.m. in the morning, correcting my grammar English. So once we finished the first project, which was actually in the UAE, it's called Lulu Project, Lulu Island. I asked him what is his advice, and he told me, Bassem, you know, you have the skills, you're ready to go, but you need to take some English writing courses. So what I did is I went to University of Miami at my own expense, of course, at my own time. And I took Grammar 101 and all the way until professional business writing. And he constantly was there to support me. And even after I left KPMG, we didn't stay in touch a lot, but whenever I wanted, I would reach out to him. And you know, he's always there for me. And I always remember him when I'm doing my analysis, even the analytical style and the way you're handling guests or adversaries sometimes, or uncomfortable situations. I always remember what he used to give me as an advice in that part. The second mentor that I would remember and is very dear to my heart, his name is Christophe Landais, and he is currently a non-executive director with Action Hotels. But the way I got to know him, he was the CEO and managing director for Accor Hotels Middle East. And the way I got to meet him was during the Arab Springs in 2010, 2011, well, actually 2011. They merged the Egyptian office to the Middle East, to the Dubai office, and he gave me the first break into the regional role. And obviously it is a big role. At that time, the company was not as big as it was, the portfolio, but he was there to support me. And a lot of times, like any human being, as you're learning, you make some mistakes, but he was there to support me. Obviously, he gave me a lot of hard times behind closed doors, but in front of our clients, with owners or guests, whatever the case may be, I couldn't have asked more for that. Until this moment today, he is my mentor, and I always take him very dear to my heart, and he's actually on my advisory board till today. So I respect him very much, and I really have very high regards of respect to him.
Oh, nice to have this continued relationship throughout the career with those two gentlemen, professionals.
Yeah.
So you mentioned at the beginning, talking about your career, how it evolved until you have now your own consulting firm. So, and you also mentioned that you've touched different fields. So can you tell us more about your firm and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. So, you know, a lot of people think that once you're revenue management, you're pigeonholed in revenue management. And that could be true to a big extent. But again, it comes down to the person, whether he or she, how willing they want to spend time in investing in developing themselves. When I say developing themselves, there's obviously the classroom courses, and there's obviously the on-the-job training. And that is the best part. And I was very fortunate to go to the CFOs, the VPOs, COOs, who were my colleagues, and I was working with them, and they would teach me. So as a result of that, today, my services are obviously the pure revenue management, that goes without saying, but then the commercial strategy as a whole, operations as well, asset management, mentorship, and turnaround consulting. Turnaround consulting has been very, very keen about it. It has been growing up, of course, due to the current situation. The funny part that a lot of people think that they can do the job by themselves. And obviously there's a lot of qualified people out there in the market, but unfortunately, a lot of people that cannot, who think they can, they're the ones that opt not to go for the turnaround consulting. And turnaround consulting is literally nothing. It's not a rocket science, but it just, one needs to be going through the right process and asking the right questions and understanding how things would work for that. So the most important thing as well is it's not only hospitality industry, because hospitality as well, within it, there's the hotel industry, there's the airlines, and there's also the wholesalers and travel agents and so forth. But what I was very keen, as I mentioned before, is to diversify myself and to try out in different industries. Some of them, I've done them pro bono, simply because I'm eminent and confident that I could have implemented that. And I've been very fortunate and very successful in these things. So these are the services that I'm currently offering.
Okay. So on a daily basis, you say you've done some pro bono, for example, some other projects. So would it be you mixing that revenue and commercial sides? So what is it entice on a daily basis, this new role that you have?
Okay. So being a consultant, and had I known what I'm doing today and the work that it requires, I would have thought about it twice before going into it. But, and especially if you're on your own business, okay? If you're working to a well-established consulting firm, then that's a different story, okay? Because it's just pretty much, it's like a firm and it's an employer and you're just an employee, but your role differs a little bit. So there's a couple of things that for whoever wants to go into consulting, you need to just keep in mind one thing. There's a lot of similarities between a corporate job and the consulting work on my day-to-day. So, but the difference is that when you're working by yourself sometimes, or you're working remotely like today, and you're the boss and you have outsourced people working with you, you need to be very disciplined in that part. And the diligence is very important. And you need to have the determination and the time management. Another thing as well that's the type of the work that you're doing. Now, work will not come to you. You need to approach potential clients. So one of the key things that I've developed more and more is now you read between the lines when you're looking at the news and you see, there's a potential opportunity there. The very first thing I see when I see that is I see who's the person whom they're talking or interviewing, and I connect with him or her, obviously. And if they do, that doesn't mean that I'm going to approach them right then and there, but I do put them in my own database and see, okay, and when at the right time, I'll prepare some sort of an approach, whether it could be simple note on LinkedIn or a phone call if I know, or somebody would make an intro, or sometimes just an email. Obviously, the emails doesn't really work very much. It's the best thing. People are people at the end of the day, and word of mouth or somebody connecting you to them will make a big difference, will open the door. At least you will be able to connect with them. So one of the key things that I've developed is I've developed a thick skin. And that is when you're sending your RFPs, not RFPs, when you're responding to the RFPs, I mean, let's be transparent. You'll be lucky if you get 10% success ratio. You'll be lucky if you can get 40% response, and the rest people will not even answer you or even care about you. And that, you don't take it personally, you just move on. It's just most probably they're getting so many proposals, and obviously if they don't know you, they will go with those that they know. And hence that's why I was saying it's much better if you have the contacts and you have your network. And this is something that I've been working very hard since I started my own consulting, is to develop my network. I used to be a very what's the right word? I don't want to say introvert. I'm very sociable person, and those who work with me, I'm very outspoken as well, who know me very well. But when developing new network, I was not really focused on that, except within my immediate network. And since I started my own consulting, I started going out of my comfort zone, and it actually is starting to pay off. But I had to develop a thick skin, and that is not an easy thing if you're not willing to learn from this. The last thing I would like to say is always look at the rejection as an opportunity and not as a regret. So if you get a rejection, if you're fortunate enough that somebody responds to you, and even if they say they deny your services, This in itself is a good step. They recognize you. So that shows that this company is a respectful company because they understand you as a human being. They have this human touch. But then at the same time, you don't look at the rejection as something as a failure. You look at it as an opportunity. You start trying to dig around. If you have some contacts within that company to understand why you didn't get the bid, obviously for confidentiality reasons, they will not tell you all the time. But if you start asking around, you get some ideas, and therefore you develop here and you develop there. And sooner or later it will come. You just have to have the perseverance and the belief in yourself and the confidence that you are the right person in order to do the right job.
Okay, well, that's a great description of what a consultant is meant to do. So thanks you. Thanks very much. Now, going back to hotels, historically, hotel hasn't been, I mean, the industry hasn't been very famous for investing much in training and development. So, I mean, you've been working many years in different companies. What is your view on that?
Well, you know, you're absolutely right. And the sad story is the very first thing when, you know, it's like when things go haywire down, whether it was currently right now during the pandemic or during crisis times, like I'll talk about the time when I was, when there was the Arab Springs, and obviously there was a lot of uncertainties in the region, not only because of the Arab Spring, but because of different situations. Usually you see that companies, whether it's coming from the owning side, pushing for it, or from the companies in general, that the very first area that they would cut in is two of them. One of them is the training and development of our colleagues, and the second one is the marketing. So in this case, I'm going to be talking about the training and development. So the funny part is we are a people's industry. So, you know, my CEO and my ex-CEO in Accor, Mark Willis, he always, the very first time when we met, and he was also, we are a people's industry, and I kept that in my mind. And therefore, we have to keep this in mind. So how on earth am I gonna be a people industry and I'm not developing my team members? At the end of the day, we have to take care of our team members and they will take care of our guests. And I think this is a famous quote, not exactly same words, but I think it was by Bill Marriott when he was the pioneer in that part. And he's absolutely right. Because if you think about it, the very first person that our guests will meet, if it's a luxury hotel, is usually our bellman. So if our bellman is not well trained, if he or she is not happy, if he or she are not taken care of, and when I say taken care of is well trained, they understand their role, they understand the importance of their role, no matter how big or small, then why are we cutting on such an important part? But again, the other part that I want to emphasize is that in the training, a lot of, throughout my experience, I've seen a lot of times, unfortunately, that people seek or consider training and development as the classroom training or the online training, depending, obviously, as the technology is progressing, more and more online training is going on interactively or just taking a course online as a catalog. That's beautiful and dandy. But the most important part, in my opinion, what I've observed, and I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of my colleagues that I've been able to contribute to their development. I cannot say that I developed them, because if it was not for them and their eagerness, nobody can develop you, is the on-job training. That is the most important thing. And then we as leaders need to be more than generous in training and developing our team, and share the knowledge, share the experience. Don't be afraid. I always, when I was recruiting people, I was always trying to recruit people who are better than I was in certain areas. I was never afraid of that, and I was very fortunate to earn their loyalty and their respect, because I'm being at that position to guide the best team possible within my budget, within my capabilities. So why would I bring someone that is not better than I am? No, bring somebody better than you, have the confidence. You, at the end of the day, as a leader, you have the helicopter view, you have something that they're still developing. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And this always works, in my opinion. I've also worked with some colleagues that unfortunately did not train me very well. They were very keen to protect everything. I still respect them very much, but I disapprove of their approach. And I did tell them that back then. I was outspoken, but when I was leaving in exit interviews, I would say that, and they respected that. Some of them changed, some of them did not, and that's okay. Each one of us is different.
Yeah, I mean, different profiles, but I completely agree with you on the approach with the learning and development. Very, very important. And another one that it's been changing a lot lately, especially with all of these software as a service companies when it comes to technology. So many hotels were not very keen to invest in technology. How is your view now,
Yes.
especially with the pandemic? Things are changing very fast.
Okay. So the interesting part in technology is actually worse than the talent and talent and development or talent and training, if you wish to call it. Why? People who work in the hotels, at least in my experience, everybody said, you know what? I don't need to bring somebody from outside. I know I can bring my own team and I can develop this tool and I can do that myself. Why would I have to go for an expert outside? So number one, they would think the way that it was done, and this, unfortunately, at that time, in so many companies, still this moment, the decisions are being made by the financial CFO or director of finance, who he or she is definitely looking at 1 + 1 = 2. Well, technology and even revenue management and a lot of other aspects of e-commerce and so forth, it doesn't work this way. 1 + 1 is actually 11 or 111, depending on the multiples that you do, because you're investing and then it ripples. The ripple effect comes within a year, 2 years, depending how fast you do it. And it depends on the project, obviously. So the approach was always very, very slow. And you had to build case studies plus case studies plus case study. Now, major hotel companies, and I will talk about Accor, for instance, just during the pandemic or last year, I think they just announced that they did an agreement, not a merge. I think with the major, I think it was Sabre that they did that, where they would be building for them the CRS. It will take a 3-year project. Now that is something to be applauded for. And why is that? Because Accor is not a technology company, but they need the technology. They know what they want exactly. So they want them to outsource what is convenient to them. So the advice always from me to anyone in the hotel industry is, do not work on something that you don't know. Yes, you are an expert in your business. You are expert in your data analysis. You have to get the best possible technology that fits your needs at that particular stage. And then you capitalize focusing on the integration part. What are the data that you want? How you're going to be able to help your colleagues in the hotel business? How you're going to be able to help in the guests and take that data to provide what we're supposed to be providing, which is providing a value-added proposition for our guests and for our owners. And that's the most important thing. So hopefully companies are changing. The question and the scary part right now is that a lot of people will be in a rush thinking that they need to jump on the wagon at this particular stage and thinking that they're behind the curve. You know what? My advice to these companies, it's okay to be behind the curve. It's okay. Don't be patient, understand what you want, what you're looking for, but do not rush and jump on off-the-shelf sweet product, because it doesn't always work. Sometimes you need some customization for that sweet product, but it's as long as you start the process, that's what really matters.
Yeah, good advice. Yeah, a lot of people are just going to whatever comes out. It's true. They should probably better wait for the right tool. Now, coming out, I mean, getting a bit of advice from your side, expert in revenue. If I can ask you for 2-3 tips or key aspects that hotels should be focusing now after the pandemic or getting out of this current scenario when it comes to revenue.
Sure. Well, I've been asked about this so many times, and I'm sure you yourself, Pablo, have been asked the same thing. But if you go through that, you can go, the list can go on and on. But the 2 or 3 key points in my opinion is, number one, be calm and patient. What do I mean by that is, today we are not out of the pandemic yet. And it is, no matter however you look at it, hopefully things will be much better in terms of the control of the pandemic. But reality speaking, the volume of the business in terms of the revenue generation, the comfort of our guests visiting the hotels is not going to come overnight, and it's going to take a cycle. Unfortunately, the hotel business is the majority. Obviously, you find spikes here and there, but if you look at the trend, it is a trend that would take it slowly out of the way. Some people are saying that the market will not recover before 2023. Some say 2022. I think that none of us in this world know exactly when it's happening. And anybody who talks saying with great confidence it's going to come by a specific date, I respectfully disagree with that person in that aspect. However, we can all concur that there is an upward trend. That is something that I can respect. I think that 2022 will be better than 2021. Yes, although it will have its dips up and down. So first, be calm, be patient, be always working in your numbers, and focus on that. And that this is going to take time. It's a ride. It's a journey that is not. We're not out of it yet, and hopefully it will be much better than what I'm expecting. But it's going to take its time. Obviously, that's not even good for myself or my business, but that's the reality, and we all have to chip in together as a community, as a global community. The second one is remain focused. That's very, very important. So you always have to remain focused on your long-term vision. So I'm sure that, and I've been approached by a lot of companies that they're saying, oh, we're going to be changing our long-term vision. Why would you change your long-term vision? The vision is a vision. The vision should be very specific, measurable, achievable, and it's time related and revenue related. So the question is not that. So that is your goal. You want to be the best company or best hotel company or best hotel in that particular market. That should never change. The question is how you're going to approach it. That is what has changed. And therefore, keep that vision and always go back again, see, okay, what you were doing before, what has changed? Can you still implement what you were working on before? Or do you need to adapt? 90%, I'll have to admit, you will have to change because the segmentation have changed, everything has changed. And then you go after that, but keep the vision there. If you're a company that you're usually having, like most major companies, they would have their 3, the 5, and the 10-year visions, business plans, I'm sorry. These will need to change a little bit, but the overall vision will not change unless if you are, it's like you were thinking other completely, trying to be out of the box completely, and you're realizing that this is not going to work at all. So that's the second point. The third point is investment. Invest, 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 invest. And what do I invest? Invest in your team. I just spoke about that. Invest in your technology. That's also, we just spoke about it. And be open-minded in changing your business structure. What do I mean by that? Today, you need to, we all have to have an agile structure. And the reason why is because everybody has to be very careful with their expenses. When I say careful with your expenses, does not mean like a lot of hotel companies, unfortunately, or businesses worldwide, I'm going to be talking about, took the first decision of laying off people, furloughing people, and then they start recruiting people. Now, there's a cost to all of that. I do respect the companies that they have contributed by talking to their team members, spoke very openly, and what they have done is obviously they did the very basic stuff by taking off the consuming your vacation, then taking a little bit of unpaid vacation, and then depending on the country laws, some of them have agreed or have proposed, instead of furloughing people, to reduce their salaries by 20, 30, sometimes 50% for a specific time, just to survive. Now, I respect that much better, and hopefully these companies, as the business comes back, they will bring the salaries back again. It all depends on the circumstances and the country laws. But why, the other thing as well is the open-minded, when I'm talking about it, is outsourcing. You have to outsource your business, the things that will not really impact your guests' interaction directly, but some of them are directly, a little bit of directly, and the others are, the majority are indirectly. Something, and what I'm going to say is nothing new. So housekeeping can be outsourced. You just have to select the right companies that are being the supplier, and you give them a little bit of extra training of how to greet the guests and so forth. So that's the other thing. The e-commerce, obviously, you can do that. Finances now is the big thing of outsourcing, and revenue management as well is being a big direction right now of moving out. Obviously, you have to sign the NDAs, the confidentiality, the whole 9 yards. But all of this can contribute to the success of the company by increasing their revenue and increasing the flow through and reducing the cost as a whole. And I think this is something that everybody needs today to think a little bit out of the box. So it's an investment and flexibility at the same time.
Okay, brilliant. Again, great advice. Hopefully people pick up some of the ideas that you've thrown in there.
Hopefully.
Good. Another one I want to touch on, focusing again on revenue, is the total revenue. It's been a buzzword for many years already, but then you talk to hotels and they don't really apply it. So I'd like to take your input on that, and how can the idea be sold to GMs or to owners on to implementing total revenue management?
Sure. So total revenue management has been the big buzzword. Another buzzword is also many engineering as well. People talk a lot about it and they have no clue what they don't know what they're talking about. But in my opinion, and I wrote a couple of things in my posts, is the total net TRevPAR. That is the real word that, and the new terminology, I think this is going to become TRevPAR, which is total revenue per available room. I'm talking about net TRevPAR is going to be, and I'm an advocate about it, I believe this is going to be the real big words. Some major companies, I'm not talking, I'm not a genius here. It's a lot of companies that have been involved while they're working with them or talking to colleagues in other companies. They're already talking about, they call it different terminologies, but it's the same concept. Because why is it very important? Because it adds the both aspects. The number one, it adds the profitability aspect, which is very, very important to the owners, because that's why they're investing, and that's when they get the net, then they know if they have to pay the loans back, how much they're going to be doing, their ROI, the whole nine. And the total revenue is the total revenue from the operational aspect as well. So when we're talking this, every single molecule in the hotel is a revenue generating opportunity. And on purpose, I'm using the word molecule. And I'll give you two examples that we have worked it out before. One of them, when I was on a property level, we did the minibar. We realized that the minibar was not working very well. We wanted to really increase it. So what we did is we did very quick analysis to see. My director of finance is the one who was always pushing for it, because he was crying because of the cost of the minibar. Surprisingly, I asked him, how much is the real cost of the minibar? And at that time, he didn't have an answer. So we started looking at that slowly but surely. And then we started analyzing to see what are the fast moving items from there and what is not moving there. And then what I did is, not myself, but the team, the committee that we're working together, we said, okay, you know what, we'll go to our corporate accounts and we'll give them their corporate rates, room only, and we will give them for just whatever amount of dollars we were asking extra as an option. Obviously, the guest himself would pay it, not the company. You will get one refill for the full minibar per day, surprisingly. And so let us assume that the cost for me was $5. I'm just throwing it out. And if somebody would empty the entire minibar, and this had alcohol, had everything, I'm just throwing numbers, we were selling it at $7. Guess what? 70% of our guests took it and they paid it out of their pocket. And you know how many people emptied the minibar out of the 1 year client? One person. Everybody would only consume whatever they want. I'm a person that when I go into a room, I always take two things, Kit Kat and my Diet Pepsi. This is the very first thing I do. So we were surprised. People were paying $7. It was costing me $5. Nobody took the entire minibar, and it was huge amount of revenue coming in for us in that one. The other one was another project that we did some beta testing, but it didn't work. We didn't finish it. I mean, because I left that hotel at that time. Was we realized in certain periods of the season, certain seasons or certain days of the week, the gender proportion was increasing between much higher from female versus male. So, and we realized that some of them are asking for for roses and so forth in the room. So what we did is I spoke to the engineering and I said, how much would it cost me to put the scent of roses in the room? And I guess it was costing me $1. I don't know how long would it take me to have that. He told me it would take you only 2 hours, depending on the time of the day. I didn't go into all the technicalities. So what we did, we started offering for the particular guests and saying, okay, if you'd like to have what scent do you like? And these are the scents that we had. And they said, would you pay $5 extra for that? By the time you get to your room, you'll find that scent. And as long as you're staying in that room, you will have that scent. And this would only take us 2 or 3 hours to turn around. It would have no scent afterwards. And surprisingly, for the beta testing that we did, 90% of the ladies that we approached them, they came to us. So I earned $5 more, came directly, increased my average daily rate, obviously my RevPAR. The cost-wise, it was less than $1, and everybody was very happy, and it was great. And so there's so many things that you can do. You just have to think out of the box. Valet parking is another area. You know, so when I was in the States, we had the valet parking in one part, and we had a limited parking space. So what did we do? I wasn't in revenue management back then, but I came up with the idea, but I was in charge of the valet parking, and said, okay, if you have an SUV, then we will charge $5. If you have a regular car, it is $2. If it's in the weekend, this is how much. And I started playing around with that. Obviously, some guests did not like it, especially those who had the big SUVs. And the answer, when I sat down with them and explained to them a little bit, and this was in the US, surprisingly, they understood. They understood that, oh, I have a limited parking space. You are driving a very luxury car, and it's an SUV. I cannot park, unfortunately, it will take 1.5 of the space. So I need to control that. And therefore, that's why we're charging you more. And people were accepting it. I think I only had 1 or 2 people who really rejected me. And obviously, I had to give it to them complimentary, charging the regular rate, just because of guest satisfaction is more important. But this was a revenue generation idea. So the ideas are crazy, comes from everybody, and everybody can come in. They always suggest that people would have a box of revenue generation idea. I think IG is extremely good in this. When I was working with IG, they had the total revenue room. And anyone could come in and put in their suggestions, and they would take and implement it and so forth. I don't know if it is still being implemented with that, but when I was with them, this was one of the cultural things that we were always doing. It worked very well.
Okay, so a few more ideas there. Very useful to drive up total revenue management. Perfect. Before we finish, some advice for young people. So a question that I always ask the guests of the podcast. So from all your insights in the industry, so what would be the advice for people who might be considering going into hospitality, so studying hospitality management or something related? And if so, what kind of skill set they need if they want to go into revenue?
Sure. So first of all, if you love being around people, then his hospitality industry is the right place to be. But be prepared. You're going to be working extremely long hours, and you'll see your friends who are working in other industries, other technology, banking, earning a lot more money than you. And but you will have a lot of other packages or small perks here and there. But be prepared. If you love the people and you are really looking forward to not to serve, I wouldn't say serve, but supporting, making the experience of the guests happier, and you're helping them in that, and that is gratifying to you, then this is the industry to be. At the end of the day, money is not everything. It's extremely important, don't get me wrong, but we cannot survive without it. But this is something that you need to be loving it. You know, this is something that is important. Now, in terms of your other question about the revenue management, just to let you know that every single team member that I had the pleasure to recruit was not didn't have a revenue background from them. Some of them had revenue experience, obviously, for the major hotels that we were recruiting for, but the majority did not. However, I was always looking for a couple of things, and this is the most important skills that people need to understand. Number one, you need to love numbers. If you hate numbers, then obviously you're in the wrong side of the industry. Number two, you need to look at the numbers and talk to them. And people laugh when I say that, but it's reality. You just talk to them. Numbers talk to you. You just have to know where to look at it. Everybody can look at the P&L or look at the performance or a trend or STR report. And every one of us, 90% people will look at it in a certain direction, but very few, 10%, will look something different, or they will ask the question. So you need to be ready to do that. You need to be ready to always question the status quo, respectfully and at the right moment, not any time, of course. And you need to always question yourself. Be ready to be spending a lot of time by yourself. This is the sad story of the revenue management, at least when you're really doing your analysis. Be ready to be willing and have the capability of communicating what your outcomes. That is very important. Not everybody finds that whatsoever. And this is a key point. It's very difficult to communicate and portray that. You cannot be, you can be a guru in revenue management, but you're always talking so technical that you lose the audience just like that. You need to make sure that you know how to communicate and to write it in simple terms, but effective at the same time. So these are the very basic things that I would suggest if you're looking at it. And that's last but not least, be ready that you're going to make a lot of mistakes. The most important thing that I always tell to my colleagues and the people that I was very fortunate to work with is, it is okay to make a mistake. The most important thing, don't repeat the mistake again in the same manner. If it is the same mistake but in a different way, then it's a new mistake. At the end of the day, you'll be able to find out that the total number of mistakes will end up to be maximum. You can count them on your fingers, and then you will be covered everything. But be prepared and admit that and learn from that. That's the most important thing.
Okay. Great. So great advice for young people to finish the conversation. Thanks a lot, Bassem, for all the information. Bassem Salam, founder and managing director of TRevMax Revenue Management Consulting Company. It's been a pleasure. Lots of insight, lots of information for all your experience. And hopefully we'll talk soon again.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Have a lovely day.
Cheers.
That was all for now. Hope you found it useful. Remember that you have more information on our website, www.torresconsulting.co.uk, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and Twitter. Stay well. Goodbye for now.